I'm 83 years old, and last Sunday I did something that may sound cruel. I picked up my phone, looked at my children's names, and then I put it back down. For the first time in years, I decided not to call them. For decades, I was the one who called every week, sometimes every few days. I told myself it was love. I told myself parents should always be the ones to reach out. But one quiet evening, while staring at a silent phone that never rang first, a painful thought finally settled in my heart. Maybe I wasn't calling because they needed me. Maybe I was calling because I was afraid of being forgotten. That realization hurt more than any silence. Many older parents won't admit this, but loneliness can hide behind polite smiles and cheerful voices. We say, "Oh, they're busy," even when weeks pass without a visit. We keep dialing, hoping this time they'll say, "I'm coming over." But here's the hard truth I discovered at 83. Sometimes the more you chase people, the easier it becomes for them to stop coming. So I stopped calling, and what happened after that shocked me, changed my relationship with my children, and taught me a lesson I wish I had learned years earlier. If you're a parent or a child, you may need to hear this story. For many years, calling my children was part of my weekly routine. Every Sunday afternoon, after making tea and sitting by the window, I would dial their numbers. At first, those calls were full of laughter and long conversations. We talked about their lives, their work, and their dreams. It felt natural, like the way families stay close. But slowly, something changed. The conversations became shorter. Sometimes they sounded distracted. Often I heard the same words. "Mom, I'm busy. I'll call you later." Most of the time, that call never came. So the next week, I called again and again and again. Without realizing it, my loving habit had turned into something else. It started to feel like I was chasing my own children just to hear their voices. There were small signs I didn't want to notice at first. Birthdays forgotten, visits postponed again and again, messages answered days later. Yet I kept telling myself they were just busy with life. But one evening, after ending another rushed phone call, I sat quietly and asked myself a painful question. When did love start to feel like begging? That was the moment a truth slowly opened my eyes. Love between parents and children should feel warm and natural, not one-sided and heavy. Being the only one who always reaches out can slowly break your heart in ways people don't see. And I began to realize something important. Maybe I needed to stop running after them, to understand what our relationship had truly become. The decision did not come loudly. There was no argument, no dramatic moment. It happened on an ordinary afternoon while I was holding my phone, about to make my usual Sunday call. My fingers hovered over my daughter's name, and then I stopped. For the first time in years, I asked myself, what would happen if I didn't call? That question felt almost frightening. A mother is used to reaching out, checking in, making sure everyone is okay. But that day, something inside me whispered that I needed to try something different, not to punish them, but to understand the truth. So I placed the phone back on the table and decided to stay silent. At first, I told myself they would notice quickly. Maybe by evening, one of them would call and say, "Mom, you didn't call today. Is everything all right?" I even kept my phone close just in case. But as the hours passed, the phone stayed quiet. That silence brought a fear I wasn't ready for. What if they didn't notice at all? What if my calls had become so routine that my absence meant nothing? The first week was the hardest. Every day I fought the urge to pick up the phone again. Many times I almost did. My heart kept saying, just call them. It's easier. But I held on because I was beginning to understand something important from my own life. Silence has a way of revealing the truth about relationships that constant effort can hide. After I decided to stay silent, the first few days felt very long. Each morning, I woke up and glanced at my phone, half expecting to see a missed call from one of my children. But the screen stayed empty. One day passed, then another. By the end of the week, there were still no calls. At first, that silence hurt more than I expected. I kept wondering if they noticed that I had stopped calling. I had spent so many years reaching out, reminding them that I was there. Without those calls, it suddenly felt like I had disappeared from their daily lives. But as the days continued, something unexpected began to happen inside me. The quiet gave me time to think clearly. I started seeing our family dynamic in a way I hadn't before. I realized how often I had made their lives a priority while slowly placing my own feelings aside. I had been afraid that if I stopped calling, I would lose them. Then a new understanding came from my own experience. Sometimes distance doesn't destroy a relationship. It reveals its true shape, and slowly my emotions began to change. The sadness that filled the first few days didn't completely disappear, but it transformed into something stronger. I began to feel a small sense of dignity returning to my heart. For the first time in many years, I wasn't chasing anyone, and strangely, that silence started giving me something I had almost forgotten. Self-respect. After a couple of weeks of silence, I started to understand something I had never thought about before. All my life, I believed that love meant always being available, always reaching out first. But by constantly calling, I may have unknowingly made my presence feel guaranteed. And when something feels guaranteed, people sometimes stop noticing its value. This was the psychological truth I discovered at 83. When you gently step back, people begin to feel the space you once filled. I didn't plan this as a trick. I wasn't trying to punish my children or make them feel guilty, but pulling back created something new in our relationship. A boundary. And boundaries, I learned through my own experience, can quietly bring respect back into places where it has faded. Then one afternoon, something unexpected happened. My phone rang. I remember looking at the screen and seeing my son's name. For a moment, I just stared at it, surprised. When I answered, his voice sounded different, concerned, a little confused. "Mom, are you okay? You haven't called in a while." That simple question told me everything. For the first time in years, they had noticed my absence instead of my effort. In that moment, I realized another lesson life had quietly taught me. Sometimes people only understand your importance when they feel what life is like without your constant presence. And that small shift began to change everything between us. It happened quietly, almost like a gentle knock on the door of my heart. After weeks of silence, my daughter finally called. Her voice trembled slightly as she said, "Mom, I realized I haven't called in a long time. Are you okay?" I could hear the confusion in her tone. She had no idea that my silence was intentional. She didn't understand that this was my way of showing that love shouldn't feel one-sided. She only knew that something had changed, something she had taken for granted without realizing it. I remember pausing before I spoke. There was so much I wanted to say, but I needed to be careful. I wanted this conversation to teach, not punish. I told her honestly how lonely I had felt, how it had hurt to be the only one always reaching out, and how I had hoped she might notice me simply by being absent for a short while. As we talked, something unexpected happened. Instead of anger or defensiveness, there was understanding. She admitted that she hadn't realized how often I had been the one to make the effort, how she had unconsciously taken my calls and presence for granted. That emotional conversation lasted for hours. We laughed, we cried, and slowly the walls that had built up over years began to crumble. Through this real-life experience, I learned a powerful lesson. Sometimes children don't realize the effect of their absence until they are faced with it directly, and only then can a meaningful change begin to take root. After everything that had happened, I finally began to see the bigger picture. Love, I realized, is not meant to feel like a burden, and being a parent doesn't mean giving endlessly while forgetting your own needs. There is a delicate balance between showing love and protecting your self-respect, and I had to learn it the hard way. For decades, I had believed that constant effort was the measure of my love. I called, I reminded, I visited, I put their happiness above my own. But in doing so, I sometimes lost sight of my own emotional well-being. Silence, as difficult as it was at first, became my teacher. It showed me that protecting my heart was not selfish, it was necessary. Through this real-life experience, I discovered a truth that many parents struggle to accept. True connection does not depend on one person's constant effort. Relationships thrive when both sides contribute, when respect flows naturally, and when absence can reveal appreciation. After I stopped chasing them, something changed in our family. Conversations became warmer. Visits became more meaningful. There was a new sense of respect, not born from fear or guilt, but from understanding and mutual care. Now, at 83, I can say that I love my children deeply, but I also love myself. And that love, I have learned, is what makes a family truly strong. Because sometimes stepping back is not giving up. It is finally teaching others the value of what they have all along. Looking back on everything, the biggest lesson I've learned at 83 is simple but powerful. Love should never feel like a constant struggle. For years, I believed that calling my children every week was the only way to show I cared. But in reality, my constant effort had made my presence taken for granted. Stepping back wasn't cruelty, it was clarity. It gave me the chance to see who truly valued my presence. And it reminded my children of the importance of family. Sometimes absence teaches lessons that words and calls never can. To families watching this, I want you to reflect. How do you treat your parents? Do you notice their efforts, their love, and their sacrifices? Or do you let them carry the weight of connection alone? Relationships are strongest when respect and care flow both ways. And to those of us who are older, who have given so much and waited patiently, your dignity and emotional health matter. You have earned the right to step back, to protect your heart, and to demand the respect that comes naturally with your love. If there is one truth I want you to remember, it is this. Sometimes the most powerful call you make is the one you choose not to make. It may change everything for you and for those you love.